Well, greetings everyone and welcome to another edition of Movie Goodness here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and today's episode is, this is going to be one of my favorite episodes because we're talking about my favorite comic book character. And it is no surprise, but it is the Batman. We're going to discuss Batman in movies in general, along with the non-spoiler review of the recently released The Batman, currently in theaters, starring Robert Pattinson and directed by Matt Reeves. I'll save it for the review. I'll save it for the review. But we're going to first discuss Batman in films and how Batman has been just this cultural phenomenon, a pop culture icon in the zeitgeist for the better part of 35 years, maybe 40 years. And I mean heavily. Batman's been around. Batman has been around since the 40s, probably 30s actually, if you want to go back to the comics. But as far as it being a big staple in pop culture history, it really started in 1989. Of course, we had the 1966 Batman television series that starred Adam West and Burt Ward. We all know about that. We know about the boom and the pow and the zip and the holy bejesus Batmans, and all that good stuff. Batman running around in tights, the campy version from the 1960s, but which really had his place in history. I mean, that was when I was first introduced to Batman. That's what got me to reading comics, was watching that show. And when I read the comics, it was completely different from that show, but I can honestly say I enjoyed it for what it was. I didn't hate on it. It hate on stuff, versions of material. Really, I don't know. I feel like this just came about, especially with the advent of social media and all that. It has been just, this ain't my Batman. This isn't my Superman. This isn't my Avengers. X-Men isn't like this and that. Look, you cannot like the adaptation of a film or a television series that's based on a comic book or even a novel or some source material that you're a fan of. But sometimes you got to distance yourself from the source material. Use the example. You look at Marvel, right? You look at all the Marvel films in the MCU. Now, all those films are universally celebrated. Everybody loves those films, stemming back from Iron Man, the Thors, and the Captain Americas, and going on to the Avengers and the 20-something odd movies that has came since then. They're based on the comic books, but they took liberties. There are certain changes that they did make, but nobody bats an eye. But for some strange reason, when it comes to DC films, if it's not just a letter by letter adaptation of a source material, the whole world just loses their minds. I think back to Marvel, and I'm not trying to compare the two, DC and Marvel, because I like them both. I like them both. It so happens that DC has my favorite superhero. But overall, I like them all. I'm a comic book fan. I'm not just a DC fan. I'm a comic book fan. I love X-Men. I love Spider-Man. I love all those from Marvel. But I just love Batman. But going back to Marvel, you take that movie, Captain America Civil War, which I enjoyed. I love that movie. But the actual comic book that is based on the Civil War comic book series, completely different. Completely different. Well, not completely. It has elements of the comic book, but they took liberties, probably because they didn't have the rights to all the characters. Which, you understand, you get it. They didn't, at the time, they didn't have X-Men, and they didn't have, they didn't have Spider-Man. I think that came at the 11th hour. But a lot of those characters weren't available to them, so they had to make changes. Now, DC, on the other hand, DC doesn't have that problem. Warner Brothers own the whole catalog. They own DC. So there's no reason for them to omit certain storylines or characters from a storyline, because they have those characters. They can't use that excuse. I'll put it that way. Batman, and this goes back to 1989. I guess you could say the first real adaptation or big screen adaptation of Batman, starring Michael Keaton, and it was directed by Tim Burton. It had huge liberties. One in particular. Number one, let's go through it. Starting with that film, it was already just a how do I describe it? It was already behind the eight ball because of the casting of Michael Keaton. Everybody looked at Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton is 5'8", maybe 5'9". But in the comic books, Batman is 6'3", I believe. So you're already hitting it there. Then you look at Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton, he's fresh off of playing Beetlejuice, which is a classic. Everybody loves it. I love it. But picturing Beetlejuice as Bruce Wayne / Batman really didn't sit well with a lot of people. Now, me personally, I'm 10 years old. I didn't care. I just wanted to see Batman. They could have got Danny DeVito to play that Batman, and I would have been happy. Which we fast forward, Danny DeVito ended up playing Oswald Cobblepot in the sequel. But I didn't care at the time. I just wanted to see Batman on the big screen. All right, that was number one. Number two, I remember there being a big brouhaha about Harvey Dent. Harvey Dent appears in that movie. Harvey Dent in the comics is white. Harvey Dent in Batman 1989 was played by Billy D. Williams, who is black. And it was a big brouhaha about that. So then we go to the Joker, who was played brilliantly, might I add, by Jack Nicholson. There was nothing wrong with Jack Nicholson's performance. There was nothing wrong with what happened in the movie. I think Jack Nicholson's performance is really underrated. I think once we got Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, people forget that Jack Nicholson literally killed it as the Joker. He was just as violent. He was as comedic as Cesar Romero from the 60s sitcom 60s show. So he was a mixture of both, but he was menacing. He was very menacing. And the big diversion from the comics was, in the movie, they wrote it in as his alter ego, well, his former self, Jack Napier, which was made up for the movie because Joker doesn't have a name. I think recently they gave him a origin, but back then, they really didn't give. Nobody cared what the Joker's name was. But Jack Napier is the one who murdered Bruce Wayne's parents, Thomas and Martha, in that alley. And that was to give, I guess, a little twist or a little, gut punch motivation for Batman in the movie. Didn't need to be. Now you think back on it. At the time, I didn't care. But now you look back on it like, you really didn't have to do that. You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to give. Batman doesn't need motivation. The fact that his parents were murdered in front of him, it could have been by a squirrel. The point is, The man is unhinged. He doesn't need motivation. And so we fast forward to Batman Returns. They had a lot of not diversity, but what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, it was mixed. It was mixed. And then the deeper you got, it even got worse with Batman Forever, and especially with Batman and Superman, Batman and Robin, which was a train wreck. It was horrible. It was horrible. But I say all that to say that we get to a point now in time when superhero films, comic book movies are actual films. You know, they're not movies. They didn't graduated from movies. You know, just popcorn entertainment thing that you do on a Saturday evening or afternoon. Go watch a movie just to escape it all. But these are really turning into films. We're having comic book movies being nominated for Best Picture. I mean, Black Panther was just nominated for Best Picture a few years ago. So these films are starting to be taken seriously, and quite frankly, it's about time. And because there's a lot of work, a lot of care, and a lot of love that is going into these films. So I'm excited to finally get to this point. I'm excited to go sit down and watch a comic book movie and not just see the pages of the comic come to life, to actually see good stories. You know what I'm saying? To see good storytelling on screen. Let's go through these films. Let's go through these Batman in films that, and we're going to break it down in sections. All right, let's go through the Tim Burton era. Well, the Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher era. And then we're going to go into the Christopher Nolan era. Then we're going to go into the DCEU era. And after which, we're going to go into our review. Yeah, I'm going to keep y'all in suspense until the end. But it's not going to be long, though. Anywho's, the Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher era. I touched in a little bit on the Tim Burton. I think majority of people have seen the 1989 Batman. We all know the history, how it just took over pop culture. I remember that summer so vividly, how everything was Batman. You see all the bat symbol everywhere. I think I still have the cup. From Taco Bell. Taco Bell had the the Batman meals or whatever, and you can get a cup with your meal and all this here. I think I have 2 of them, in fact, but I got 2 of those cups from there. I still have it from that summer. I still have. I gotta look at it. Well, it's probably thrown away now, but in my mother's house, I had the Batmobile Hot Wheels toy. I love that thing, man. I love that Batmobile. That summer, and from that point on, it was all Batman. Everybody fell in love with Batman, and all the naysayers that felt that Michael Keaton was just going to be a joke. You know, it was going to be the camp from the 60s. Were put to shame. Now, don't get me wrong. There is some campiness to that film. There's some campiness actually to all these films in his era. Batman Returns, Batman Forever, and Batman and Robin. Batman and Robin for certain. All these films have camp, but it was dark. And it was so much hate for the darkness of it. But around that time, just 3 years prior to that, Frank Miller wrote The Dark Knight Returns. That epic graphic novel that was just out of this park bonanzas. And still to this day is revered as one of the best graphic novels ever. And they did an animated film on it. Actually, it was a 2-part. It was great. I think it's on HBO Max right now if you want to check it out. It is awesome. But it was dark. And it really changed the view of Batman in comics. And that's what Tim Burton wanted to put on screen. And it was beautiful. I enjoyed it. Enjoyed Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton is still one of my favorite Batmans on screen. He just embodied it. And the fact that he never read a Batman comic book in his life prior to this really speaks volumes on how talented he is as an actor, because he understood. He understood. Going into Batman and I'm so anxious to get to that classic Batman and Robin. Batman and I keep doing it. Batman Returns. Batman Returns. In my opinion, people, which might be a little controversial, but I think it's a tad bit better than the 1989 Batman. I enjoyed Batman Returns a little bit more. Batman has the nostalgia factor going for it. The fact that it was the first, the fact that it came out of nowhere and just took the world by storm. But Batman Returns, and if I say Batman and again, I'm gonna shoot myself. Batman Returns just took it to a whole nother level. Yeah, it still had the camp. I know a lot of people did not really appreciate Danny DeVito's take on Penguin, but I didn't mind it. You know, granted, it was a complete deviation from him in the comics. Oswald Cobblepot is more of a gangster. In this film, they had him. He was just a freak. He was a pure freak. Look, it fit the movie. That's what they were going for. That was the tone of the film. It didn't bother me. Catwoman. There's a lot of debate, especially now after the Batman with Zoe Kravitz. There's a lot of debate who's the best Catwoman. Without spoiling anything, it's really hard to Michelle Pfeiffer, bro. It's hard to overtake Michelle Pfeiffer. Yeah, still to this day, she is awesome. She is awesome. I love. Nobody can overtake her in my eyes. In my eyes, and she's just great. And they've had some other ones that were good, but she is great in that role. Moving on. Okay, Tim Burton left. Michael Keaton left. That leaves us to Joel Schumacher, who came in, took over, and decided to run with it. I like Joel Schumacher as a filmmaker. I liked most of his films that don't pertain to Batman. Joel Schumacher has made some great, and I mean great films. A Time to Kill. He made Falling Down. And on and on. He's made some amazing movies. Then he made Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. I'm gonna link those two together so we can get through this. These movies were bad. I did not like them. At the time, I liked Batman Forever, but thinking back throughout time, I now realize that I just accepted it for what it was. And now that I'm older, I can't, because I've seen better Batman films, and I just cannot accept that. That was not good. That was not a good movie. I mean, take Batman out of it. It just wasn't a good movie. And Batman and Robin, that was just complete trash. Hot take. Y'all ready for this? A hot take. I'd rather sit down and watch Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, on replay than watch 5 minutes of Batman and Robin. I cannot stand that movie. That is a crime against humanity. That movie is so bad. I don't understand how it left. I don't understand how it got past the writer's room. Who approved that? I mean, that movie was horrible. But that set back Batman. After the release of Batman and Robin, that put Batman just out of the zeitgeist. Comic book films up to that point had failed to the wayside. I mean, that came out at 97? So it was a while. It was almost 10 years before we even got another inkling of a Batman film. It was rumored forever. They tried to get Batman Year One movie going. That didn't work. With Darren Aronofsky, he was gonna make it, but it was gonna be grittier and realistic violence, and it was gonna be rated R. And coincidentally, he wanted Joaquin Phoenix to play Bruce Wayne, which, funny how he ended up being the Joker and won an Oscar for it. The reason that didn't get made because Darren Aronofsky didn't agree on who should play Bruce Wayne. He wanted Joaquin Phoenix. Warner Brothers wanted Freddie Prinze Jr. And they could not come to an agreement, so that was shelved. They went on, they tried to make Batman versus Superman. No, not that what we got from Zack Snyder. They was going to make a Batman versus Superman movie with Wolfgang Peterson directing. And it was going to be horrible because I read the screen. They released the screenplay online a couple of years ago, and I read it. And it involved Lex Luthor, think being he ended up being Kryptonian, I believe. I forgot how it went, and it was just a mess. It was a mess. Batman slept with Lois Lane, and it was messed up. So thank God that didn't go through. So they had Justice League Mortal. Now, Justice League Mortal, I was excited about because they had got casting down. They had started building sets. Everything was on a go. Armie Hammer was cast as Bruce Wayne, aka Batman. And if you look at Armie Hammer and his statue, his chiseled jaw and everything, you're like, oh, he's perfect, man. I mean, Armie Hammer about 6'5", a big stocky fella. He's canceled now. I think he's he done some unpopular things to the ladies throughout time and got exposed for it. So it's a good thing that didn't go through either. But the writer's strike happened like a month before they were supposed to start shooting, and that killed that. So once that got demolished, Christopher Nolan stepped in. And said, you know what? We got to start from scratch. He came in, boom, gave us arguably one of the best, two of the best Batman movies ever. And 2005, we got Batman Begins, which starred Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, who is a lot of people's favorite Bruce Wayne Batman. And I'm not mad at you for feeling that way. He was awesome. He was awesome. I didn't like him around the time. I ain't gonna say I didn't like him. He just wasn't the best in my eyes. But throughout time, as I weigh on it a little more, I'm like, yeah, he was good. It's still elements of those movies that I didn't like. I didn't like how Batman was portrayed. And it wasn't his fault. I think it was the filmmaker's fault. But that being said, the movies was great. Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, which should have been nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture, if not won. It goes down as one of the best comic book movies ever made. It was great. That movie was so good. You could take Batman out of it. You could take the Batman element out of it, Batman and Joker out of it, and just have a crime thriller, and it would be great. That's the sign of a good comic book movie. Now, The Dark Knight Rises, it was all right. Could have been better, should have been better. I think it should have. It did not end on a good note for me. That trilogy should have ended better, but it wasn't a horrible film, but it just didn't live up to the hype of it. It's hard to follow up The Dark Knight. That was a tall task. So, you know, what it's not too much more you can expect from that. But that trilogy grossed $2.4 billion. So there's no arguments there. So once that was out the way, we got the launch of the DCEU, or the DC Extended Universe, which started in 2016. And we got the release of Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. I was so hyped for that movie, despite Ben Affleck being cast. And Ben Affleck turned into, at one point, depending on when you ask me what day or how I'm feeling, he could be my favorite, or he could be in the top three. He never falls out of the top three or four. But well, yeah, 3 or 4. But he is definitely one of my favorite interpretations of that character. He is the old grizzled Bruce Wayne, who's been through it all, who saw Robin get murdered and been the battles with Joker, been the battles with Penguin, been the battles with Riddler, been the battles with all the rogues gallery. And now he's just tired. Now he's not pulling punches. He's just out here just killing fools. And that's who he is at this point in time. And I liked his interpretation. I really did. I'm mad we didn't get a solo film from Ben Affleck. That's still gonna haunt me to this day. But I'm glad we got what we did get. From there, we got Justice League. Not too much caring for that, but Zack Snyder's Justice League, I am glad. I loved it. He had a line in that film. I'm trying to think of it right now. Oh, he had a line in that film when he was talking to the rest of the Justice League, and they were talking about Steppenwolf and how many worlds he done conquered and all this here. And Bruce Wayne, Batman, tells him, like, I don't care how many worlds he's conquered or how many demons he's faced. He's never faced us. Not united. And I was ready to run through a wall. I was ready to run through a wall for him. I mean, that is Batman. Batman don't care. I loved his interpretation. So we still gonna get a Ben Affleck in as Batman one last time later this year in The Flash. Also gonna get Michael Keaton returning as Batman in The Flash. So that's gonna be interesting to see how they do all that and whatnot. Also, we're going to get Michael Keaton as Batman in Batgirl, which will be on HBO Max in December. So that's going to be even more interesting. So we're getting a whole bunch of Batmans here, and I can't wait. Now, we've had a Joker film, like I mentioned before, Joaquin Phoenix. Didn't have Batman in it per se. We did see a young Bruce Wayne. We saw Thomas Wayne, and yes, it was in Gotham and all this here, but I really don't associate that film with Batman, but it's good to get those little nuggets, I guess you can say. That was cute. But overall, Batman has just been a staple in pop culture, and it's still going on to this day. And I'm glad I'm here to witness it. I'm glad that Batman is just going strong, man. Batman is the thing that's holding the DC universe up right now, because nothing else is popping. Not like this. I mean, you can say Wonder Woman, but that Wonder Woman 84 was horrible. Aquaman wasn't all that good. Yeah, it made $1 billion, but it wasn't all that good. Hopefully the sequel's better. Flash got potential. It's been a lot of hit or misses when it comes to DC. I mean, Shazam was good. I like Shazam. Suicide Squad was trash, but the Suicide Squad was good. I think Batman is the most consistent thing that we have. I mean, going back 40 years. Even the bad Batman films make money. Batman and Robin made money. It just didn't make a lot, but it made its money. But we're finally getting some awesome Batman material. Real curious how this Flash movie's gonna go. Really, really curious. But before we get to that, before we get to the Flash, which comes out in November, we got this film that dropped this weekend in theaters. Most anticipated film of the year. This was on my number one. This was my number one. This was my number one. I hate that it happened so early, but I love that it happened early because I wasn't going to wait throughout the year for this. But the rest of this year has a lot to live up to. First off, let me start off. Now, we're going into our review. This is my non-spoiler review of the Batman. And first off, let me start off by saying, this may come off as a little biased. It may come off as a little biased, being as though I am a self-proclaimed biggest diehard Batman fan that I know. I am the biggest Batman fan you can ever meet. If you ever want to sit down and have a chat about Batman, we can have a chat. That's just my jam. I love Batman. The reason I love Batman, Batman is a human being. There's nothing special about Batman, except for the fact he's rich. And he said that in one of the movies. I think it was Justice League. He said, because Flash asked him, what's your superpower? He's like, I'm rich. And that's the truth. He doesn't have superpowers. He's to the peak of human ability. He's worked out enough to whereas he's the strongest. He's the fastest and most agile. Yeah, he's to the peak of human ability, but there's nothing super about him. But his mind, he is super intelligent. And that is the one thing that has been missing from all the films that I listed out. They were good films. Some were even great. But we never got to see Batman use his mind as far as solving crimes, being the world's greatest detective as he is in the comics until now. Honestly, I gave myself a couple of days before I settled on this review because I wanted to give my most honest assessment as possible without letting my personal bias get in the way. I didn't want to just walk out the theater, come home, and open this computer and sit behind this microphone and go spewing out all my feelings at that moment. I really wanted to sit down and give a honest review of this film. Let it settle a little bit. So is the hype that I had while watching it and while walking out the theater still gonna be there 2 days later? Because normally it takes 2 days for my mind to really settle. And movies that I said, oh man, this movie got off. Hey, you ever done that? Man, this movie's gonna get. Man, that movie was awesome, man. That movie was fire. This was yada yada yada. Then a couple of days later, it run across your mind, man, that was stupid. That part, why they did that? Or you'll watch it again and you're like, hey, this movie ain't really that good. This isn't as good as I remember it. I can honestly say, after 2 days, nothing changed. Nothing changed. The only anxious thing I had was talking about it. And talking about it without spoiling it. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I'm not. Trust me, y'all have nothing to worry about. I'm not going to say not one thing to spoil it. Well, I will say this one thing. And this ain't really a spoiler, but it felt good to walk into a Batman film and not have to see Thomas and Martha Wayne get shot in the alley. Finally, there was a Batman film when I didn't have to see those pearls scattered all over the place. This didn't have that. We did not have the origin of Batman. Automatically right there, it gets 10 points. Because it didn't have that scene. Didn't need it. Everybody know. My mama know that. And we know that story. We don't need to revisit it again. Okay, so that was great. This is the closest live action version of Batman to the animated series from the early, mid to late 90s we've ever seen. If you're a fan of the animated series that came on, what that was, Fox Kids or whatever it was back in the day, the cartoon, if you of Kevin Conroy doing the voice, Mark Hamill as the voice of Joker and all that, if you're a fan of that animated series, this is the movie for you. This is the closest adaptation I have seen to that. I mean, my personal opinion. This the vibes I got from it. It was, oh my God. I mean, what can I say? Where do I start? I don't know where to start. I can say that this film is if I had to just sum it up in one statement, The Batman is the definitive Batman movie. Definitive. Now, there's going to be some comparisons. Some people going to ask, well, because this I've already been asked a few times. Oh, is it better than The Dark Knight? Is it better than Christian Bale's Batman? Is it better? I'm not putting it up there. I'm not giving it Dark Knight level. Dark Knight is, in my opinion, and I kind of hinted to it earlier, that Dark Knight, aside from being a Batman movie, it really not a Batman movie. I really don't categorize it like that, if that makes sense. I'm more it's more of a great crime drama to me. I never really looked at it as a Batman film, as much as I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the Batman. I enjoyed, of course, Heath Ledger as the Joker, but it wasn't about Batman to me. You know, because think about it, if you take away Batman and Joker out of it and just have a cop and this crazy lunatic running around New York City or something, you would still enjoy that movie. So that's the way I look at it. I don't know. It's just funny. Don't get me wrong. I love it. It's an A+ movie. But this movie here, as far as a Batman film, you can't hold nothing can hold a stick to it. You can't hold a stick to it. It is perfect. This is truly a masterpiece. The masterpiece. For the fans of the comics and the animated series, as I said before, they should enjoy this film from beginning to end. I mean, from the opening shot to the final shot. You should enjoy this movie from beginning to end. Let's start. Let's break it down. Let's start with the acting. Let's address the elephant in the room. Robert Pattinson. How was he as Batman? Did we get the sparkling vampire? Anybody that brings up Twilight to me, from now on, I'm going to slap him in the face. I have nothing else I can't talk to you because you are an unintelligent person. Nobody should be questioning Robert Pattinson no more. No more. Yes, he was an awesome Batman. Awesome. I'm not ready to put him as the best. I want to give that time. And that's the only reason I'm going to say that. Otherwise, I would say he was the best. But I want to give it time to simmer. Because the other actors who I've listed as the best Batman performances and stuff, they've had multiple performances as this character. So it wouldn't be fair to just put him at number one, and he's only been Batman one time. So that's the only thing that's holding him back. Robert Pattinson, he captured the menace of Batman and the torment of Bruce Wayne perfectly. Perfectly. I mean, this was a Batman you did not want to see in the alley. This was a Batman that you, if you saw him walk, if you was doing something that wasn't on the level and he walked up behind you, I hope you wearing a diaper. This was the Batman from the comics, from the animated series. I mean, fear. He put fear in the criminals. You was scared to death of Batman in this movie. And Robert Pattinson, my chef's kiss, man. I'm sorry I doubted you. And this ought to shut the internet up forever. Every time there's a casting of somebody, whether it's Batman, whether it's Joker, whether it's Superman, whatever character it is, and the internet collectively lose their mind, they've always been proven wrong. Every single time. It's time to stop. Robert Pattinson, he done put the nail in the coffin. It's over. Stop questioning the casting choices of these directors and studios and whoever's over that. They know what they're doing. Perfect casting. Robert Pattinson, man. Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, Selena Kyle. I loved her journey. Loved her journey in this film. She had the right amount of strength and independence, yet she showed enough vulnerability throughout the film, and she had a storyline going out throughout this film that was very prevalent, and I'm shocked. I was shocked by it. I didn't know it was going to go that deep into Catwoman's story, and the little twist that they gave with her. Nice twist. Paul Dano as the Riddler. Paul Dano. As far as Batman villains are concerned, everybody knows, hands down, collective 100% voting unanimously, Heath Ledger's Joker. There's no questioning that. There's no debating that. There's no arguing that. But coming in on the rear, Heath Ledger was running away with it, hands down. He had nobody behind him. Paul Dano is on his heels. He haven't passed him, but he's on his heels. The Riddler. This was the most menacing version of the Riddler we've ever seen on screen. I mean, he was actually frightening. He was frightening, and that's the opening scene. From the opening scene of the movie, you know what you're getting. This dude struck fear into the people of Gotham. Oh man, I loved perfect villain for this. Colin Farrell. Oh my God. Almost stole the movie. Seriously, he almost stole the movie, and he's not in it that often. I think what 2-3 scenes maybe. Almost stole the movie. I'm so excited for that HBO Max show they're producing, with Colin Farrell as the Penguin. If you didn't know, let me tell you how good he is. And I know people have been saying this since they cast him, since the reviews started coming out, and I'm a amen it and say it again. If you didn't know it was Colin Farrell, you wouldn't believe it. If you didn't know that was him, you would not believe it. He don't look like Colin Farrell. He don't sound like Colin Farrell, and he doesn't act like Colin Farrell. Colin Farrell, I almost stole the movie. I mean, I see why he's getting his own show. It was that good. It was that good. But the best character in this movie, it wasn't Robert Pattinson. It wasn't Zoe Kravitz. It wasn't Paul Dano. It wasn't Colin Farrell. And I ain't even mentioned Jeffrey Wright. I didn't mention Andy Serkis and the other multitude of people who everybody was cast perfectly. But the best character in this film was the city of Gotham. Gotham City is a character within itself. Gotham City in this movie feels like a real lived-in place. It feels like a cesspool of corruption and evilness. This was the best interpretation of Gotham City I've seen on screen. There's nothing bubbly about Gotham City. At night it's dark, it's grimy, it's raining all the time. It just looks like a cesspool. Even during the daytime, it's gloomy. It just looks like you don't want to live there. There's nothing about Gotham City that's appealing to move there. To uproot your family and move to Gotham City. Gotham City is a character within itself. There's nothing else I can say about that. The direction. Matt Reeves, sir. Matt Reeves. I would argue that Matt Reeves made a film, not a movie, a film with the passion and care of any Oscar-nominated movie you see this year. Now, I'm not going as far to say this should be sweep awards season next season or whatever, which right now, if they was going to hold it for movies that came out this year, yeah, this hands down the best film of the year. But this was so carefully directed. I mean, this wasn't a cash grab. This wasn't just a run-of-the-mill comic book movie. This was a actual film that you could tell he put a lot of time and effort and love into this. You could tell he loved this character. You could tell he loved the world of the Batman, because everything was handled with care. Every character was well developed. Which leads me to my other point. This movie's 3 hours long. And it didn't feel like 3 hours. Actually, at the end of the movie, you was mad that you didn't get more time. This movie should be a testament to studios. Especially the studios that produce comic book movies. Give the filmmakers time to develop the characters, get the story running, get you 3 cemented acts in a film to flush out the story. And that's what this movie did. Yes, it's 3 hours, but it needed those 3 hours. Actually, I hear a lot of complaints online, that, they could have chopped off 10, 15 minutes here or there. No, I think they could have added about another 15, 20 minutes to it to probably set up something else. But I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it at all. The cinematography, oh man, Greg Foster. this was the most beautiful looking comic book movie I've ever seen because it looked so real. Everything looked so vivid, and the darkness was just, I just can't describe it. It's, it was shot so beautifully. Batman, there weren't any shaky cam, and Batman doing you could tell when computer generated fight sequences go on. It was none of that. It looked like it was a lockdown camera, wide angle, didn't have all these cut edits and all this here. It was like one takes of this fight and Batman doing his thing. Oh man, it was so beautiful. The score, Michael Giacchino's score. After Danny Elfman's Batman theme from the 1989 films, which has been has become a staple of Batman themes. I mean, they even used it in the animated series. The score, you hear that score now, you know what it is. If somebody hear that Batman theme, you know what it is. There's no words to it or nothing. You know that Danny Elfman 1989 Batman theme. I didn't think anything could rival that. I didn't think anything could rival Hans Zimmer's score from Batman v Superman and Justice League, but it wasn't as good. Of course, it didn't overtake Danny Elfman's. I'm not saying that Michael Giacchino's score takes it over, but what a beautiful score. What? I mean, it was just so it was like angels singing. It was such a beautiful score. I've been listening to it every day on Apple Music. It is so beautiful. I love this score. One of my last points. This film is called The Batman for a reason. That ain't just the title. That's not just the character in the film. It's called The Batman, and that's exactly what you get. Robert Pattinson is in that bat suit. He's in the cape and the cowl. I'ma say 88% of the movie. The other 12%, he was Bruce Wayne. And it was only 3 scenes. 3 scenes, it may be 4. But I'm thinking it's 3. That he was Bruce Wayne. And those were short scenes. The rest of the film, he was Batman. He was Batman. You think back now. You think back to Michael Keaton. You probably saw what? They probably had 3-4 scenes of Batman, going through the other films during that era. The Dark Knight trilogy, Christian Bale. It was a little more. Batman v Superman and Justice League wasn't that much of Batman. You had it was about 50-50 split. This movie, Robert Pattinson was in that suit the whole movie. This movie was a detective story. This was a film noir. The old 1930s and 40s type feel. Detective movies. You remember with the detective with the trench coat and the fedora. That's what it felt like. He was investigating. He was in crime scenes gathering evidence. He was taking home trying to decipher these riddles. He was doing all this. That's the majority of this film. And in the meantime, when he needed some more clues, he'll go out, investigate, beat up some people, get some more information, try to get it to. I loved this movie. Even if I wasn't a gigantic Batman fan that I am, even if I wasn't into comic book movies, which I am, I honestly can tell you this was an awesome, awesome movie. It's probably one of the best comic book superhero movies I've ever seen. And I know I'm not speaking in hyperbole. I'm not just throwing it out there. I thought about this, people. I really thought about this. I sat down. I just didn't want to go crazy and make stupid statements. This is my honest to God feeling. This was the best comic book superhero movie I have seen in a long time. And this is somebody who sat there and watched Avengers Endgame twice. This is somebody who watched 4 hours of Justice League. This is somebody who just been watching all these movies, stemming all the way back to the Supermans and all this here, the Blades, the Spider-Mans, and oh man, and this is off the heels of Spider-Man No Way Home, which is rivaling for the best comic book movie ever made. This blows that out the water. Spider-Man who? I mean, this was a masterpiece. This was a masterpiece. Now, I can honestly say it wasn't action-packed. It didn't have, any jaw-dropping action sequences to whereas you're like, you could compare it to, you remember the warehouse scene in Batman versus Superman when Batman beat up all them people in the warehouse? Basically killed them. He ain't beat them up. He was killing fools. And yeah, that was an awesome, because that was right out of the Arkham games, his fighting style. This movie, he had some fight. It was brutal. Oh, it was brutal. He was beating the snot out of people. It was brutal. And another thing, that was so much. Is another thing. This movie, I also read complaints. Oh, it should have been R. It should have been rated R. Okay, point me to the other rated R Batman movies that you can compare that to, because there aren't any. It's Batman. Come on, man. But regardless of that, this movie really skirts the line of R. I'm actually shocked it didn't get an R rating. The only thing missing was blood. And I think that's what saved it. Had it had more blood, it probably would have been R. If this movie would have been released, I'll say 20 years ago, it would have been R. I'm confident in saying that. This was really brutal, but I loved it. I loved it. The Batmobile in here. The Batmobile was a character. The Batmobile had fear. Look, everybody, I honestly, I recommend everybody go check this movie out. This is the best adaptation of the Batman I've seen on screen. And this is coming from a true Batman fan. Nothing else can compare to it. Honestly, I'm willing to have a debate with anyone. I'm willing to have that debate with anybody who feels that there's a better Batman movie than this. Because in my humble opinion, it's one of the best comic book movies I've seen. It is perfect. Perfect. I do have a couple of flaws. I was saving those to the end. And it's once again, non-spoiler. I haven't spoiled. I ain't told y'all nothing about the movie, really. My nitpicks, I think Alfred, he wasn't in it enough. Andy Serkis, when he was on screen, I loved him, loved his performance, but he was kind of shelved for a majority of this film. That's it. That's my only flaw. That's my only flaw, and that is And I said it was nitpicking. It's not nothing big, but I thought there probably should have been maybe just one more scene between him and Bruce. But overall, great job, man. I would say I'm shocked, but I shouldn't be shocked because there's so much talent in front of and behind the camera here is, it's amazing that this was an actual Batman movie. This movie seems like when you watch it, you're probably gonna sit there and watch it and be like, I didn't deserve this. I felt like I was unworthy to watch this. I felt dirty afterwards. I had to go home and take a shower. And this was like, man, I didn't deserve this movie. This was so amazing. And I'm so glad that it finally came out and I got to experience it in theaters, just like I hope and pray either you have seen it already or you're planning to go check it out this weekend. My grade for The Batman is an A+. I mean, what you want me? Are you kidding? Of course it's an A+ 100. This was awesome. Masterpiece. Now, this is my opinion. I've seen some reviews where people did not like this movie. I don't understand it. Don't know why. But hey, whatever. I'm just giving you my review of the film. My review, it is an A+ movie. One of the best comic book movies I've ever seen. Definitely the best on-screen adaptation of a Batman property yet. It's the best, man. It's the best. I felt like I was watching a live action version of the animated series. Honest to God. It was beautiful, man. It was just beautiful. So that's my review of The Batman. Have you seen it yet? If you've seen it yet, let me know. You email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. I would love to know your feelings on The Batman. I mean, you can disagree. It's fine. Don't be afraid. Don't think that I'm gonna get mad or shun you. No. I'm still gonna love you regardless. I just want to know. But if you say you don't like it, I want to know why you didn't like it. Because maybe I'm missing something. Maybe you can teach me. Maybe you can show me the light. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I missed something. But I don't think I did. I will do a spoiler review, but I'm not going to do a spoiler review until next month. And that's when it's going to be released on HBO Max. I think in 45 days or 50 days, something like that. So I think it's in April, mid-April. That is going to be released on HBO Max. But I'm telling y'all, me saying that, y'all probably going to say, well, I'll wait till next month to watch it. No, you really do need to see this in theaters to get the experience. It is a beautiful film. And I saw it in IMAX. So it's kind of different. But I mean, if you can see it in IMAX, see it in IMAX. But you really do need to see the scope of this film, the way Gotham City is shot. How is it feels like a living, breathing organism. This city. And I think the best way to experience that is on the big screen. Of course, that's just me. I don't work for Warner Brothers. I wish I did, but I don't work for DC Films. I'm just giving my opinion. You need to see this on the big screen. But yeah, I would like to see your opinions or hear your opinions. Like I said, email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. Also, for those of you who are listening on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, leave those 5-star ratings, leave those reviews. It helps the show out tremendously. It really does. Because that allows the show to rise up the rankings. And when it rises up the rankings, that means it's easier to find on the platform, and along with helping out with sponsorship to help this show out. So leave those stars and reviews. If you're listening on Spotify, you can also leave stars there too, as well as follow the show. You can share the show on your various social media platforms. While you're on those social media platforms, don't forget, you can look up the KB Radio Network on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all social media platforms, and all podcast listening platforms. Everybody, look, man, I'm so happy to finally get this off my chest. That I can talk to somebody about this movie, because man, it has been, the past 2 days has been rough, because I've been trying to just work it out in my head. Is this real? Is this not real? I had to pinch myself. Like, do I really feel this way? Am I going to be let down? And I'll say this: if I get a different feeling going forward, I'm gonna mention it on the show. I will mention, you know what? I don't feel as strong about this as I did before. But I don't think I have. Normally, it takes 2 days. No matter what the movie is, I've seen, after 2 days, I know whether it was good or not to me. So it's been, 2.5, almost 3 days, and I feel just the same. Nothing has changed. Actually, in some parts, it's got even better. I love this movie. I hope you check it out if you haven't checked it out yet. Please go see The Batman in theaters this weekend. Robert Pattinson, you're the man. Everybody, I love you. Continue to love one another. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.